Welcome, fellow lovers of the Bhagavad-gītā, to our day. I don't even forget what day this is. It's day 21 of our study of the Bhagavad-gītā. Today we read the beautiful, the powerful, the very important chapter 12 of the Bhagavad-gītā, which will conclude the middle 6 chapters where the primary upfront and in-your-face focus has been Bhakti Yoga. And there's going to be a very big and important question asked in this chapter. In one sense, it's kind of just the big question in Vedanta itself. You know, there's two ways that one can approach the divine, or let's say there's two ways that people do approach the divine, particularly two in Vedanta. Some approach the personal divinity, that form of Kṛṣṇa, or sometimes a form of Vishnu. And then there's the non-personal divinity, the unmanifest. Unmanifest understanding, unmanifest aspect of the Supreme. In other words, it has no attributes, it has no personality, it's like a big divine light. It's a more abstract facet of the absolute truth, of the Supreme, of the divine, that some find, at least initially, more appealing. And so the question is, of these two, who knows yoga best, right? We've been speaking about how the Bhagavad-gītā is a comparative study of the different ideas and the different practices, the different dharmas that are presented in the Vedic literature. And this is, in one sense, the most important comparative question. And it's presented in the 12th chapter very unambiguously. The question is asked very direct and the answer is given very direct, and there's not really too much that one can become confused about. So let's go back a little bit just for a second. In chapter 9, there's a few verses. Let's look at verses 9, 13 through 15. Remember that 9 opened up with Kṛṣṇa saying to Arjuna, because you're not envious of me. And here also, envious means you have no hostility towards me. You have no issues with me. You don't have a problem with me being the absolute truth in the form of a person. You don't have any issues with me having all these incredible glories, like all the universes emanate from me, and I'm pervading this entire universe, and I'm in the heart of every living being, and everything's working under my control. When you hear those things, you don't get triggered. Your interest actually increases. And so that's where the 9th chapter started. And then there's some back and forth about the different ways people approach the absolute. And at one point in text 13, Kṛṣṇa said, those who are not deluded, the great souls of the Mahatmas, they're under the Daivam Prakritimashritah. They're under the protection of the divine energy. He said they are fully engaged in bhakti, in devotional service, and they know me, Kṛṣṇa, as the supreme, original, and inexhaustible. This body is not limited in any way. It's the origin of everything, and it's not limited like material forms are limited. It's inexhaustible. It can produce unlimited. It can go on unlimited. This body of mine is not ordinary. And those that know it, the great souls, the Mahatmas, he said, they're always chanting my glories. They're doing kirtan, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls, they perpetually worship me with devotion. So when it comes to the big question, those are the people that worship the personal divinity, that approach the divinity as Kṛṣṇa, the person. All right. Who knows yoga better, right? Because then he goes in text 15, he says, others who engage, and then he names 3 ways that others approach the divine. He says, others who engage in the sacrifice by cultivation of knowledge, we can call that jnana yoga. But the word he uses here is ekatvena. They approach the oneness. Or he'll say it here, they worship the Supreme Lord as ekatvena, one without a second. The oneness, right? Pritatvena bahudha, in duality or diverseness. And that means they worship the diverse demigods, right? There's so many different gods and goddesses that could be worshipped because they provide different things in life. So that's the second way. In the oneness, in the duality. And then Vishvato Mukham. Vishvato Mukham. Mukham means face, and Vishvato means the universe. The one that has faces all over the universe. That was the universal form that we heard about in the 11th chapter, right? It's, I worship the universe. I'm not so much into a person, an individual person, but the universe I can worship. So there are three ways mentioned there. Now, in chapter 9, shortly after these verses, Kṛṣṇa gives a explicit kind of analysis of the comparative value of worshiping the various devas compared to worshiping him as a person. And he clearly states that it's far more advantageous and far more direct and far more, the results are far better. And it makes much more sense to worship him directly, to connect with him through yoga, to keep one's mind fixed on him always, to see him everywhere, etc. And then in text 11, we heard all about the worship of the universal form, and we saw that the universal form extends from Krishna's form, right? In the 9th chapter, we saw that the devas come from Kṛṣṇa, and everything that they give you, Kṛṣṇa is giving you. And in the 11th chapter, we saw that the universal form is just extending from the body of the two-armed Lord Kṛṣṇa. So why not go to the source? Why not go to the origin? Now, in chapter 12, this other category that was mentioned, ekadvena, those who approach the Supreme as the one without a second, as this oneness, they'll be talked about here. And now think about just a few verses back. Now we're going to go back to the 11th chapter, towards the end, 1151. After seeing the universal form, Arjuna begins to speak of, then Kṛṣṇa comes back to the four-arm form, and then the two-arm form, and then Arjuna is looking at Krishna's two-arm form. Oh, what a relief after seeing that devastating, all-powerful demonstration of the universal form, which was destructive, and there's the element of time was working and crushing everything, and now he's seeing sweet Kṛṣṇa. And he says this, Dristvedam manusham rupam, seeing this human form, Tava saumyam Janardana. O Janardana, O Kṛṣṇa, which this form of yours, which is saumyam, it's very beautiful, it's very pleasing, it's very sweet, it's very gentle, very satisfying, right? Idanim asmin samvritaha sachetasa. Now my mind has settled, right? Seeing this beautiful, gentle, pleasing form of yours, my mind is settled. And prakritim gataha, and I'm restored to my original nature, he says. So seeing this form is so dear, is so satisfying, is so pleasing, is so very beautiful. So it leads Arjuna to ask this big question right up front. Who understands yoga better? Those that worship this beautiful, pleasing, satisfying, gentle. He's not intimidating, right? Oh, he's just so pleasing to see. Oh, the sweet smile and beautiful. He's got beautiful eyes, and it's not that they're just beautiful, but they're melting with compassion. When you look into his eyes, you know he loves you. He cares about you. You know, who knows yoga better? Those that worship you. I'll read the verse itself. Text 1, chapter 12. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested, right? He says, K yoga vittamaha. Who understands yoga best? Or who are the, you can say like this, who are the best knowers, or who are the greatest knowers of yoga? Those that worship your personal form through bhakti, or those who approach you in the unmanifested, in your unmanifested feature. Essentially, he's asking a question. The way that the bhakti yogis would put this is, I can approach you as Brahman or as Bhagavan. Bhagavan means the personal Kṛṣṇa who you can know and love. And Brahman is his energy. It's him, but it's not all of him. It's kind of like a non-personal aspect of him. It's an energy that radiates from him. It's a light that radiates from him. And if you become deeply absorbed in it, You feel peace and relief, and in a sense, you feel bliss. So who knows yoga better? Now, at the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna's already stated unequivocally that the best yogi, he said it straight up, the best yogi is the one that's worshiping him, meditating on him deep in their heart, with great faith, serving him with love. That's already been said, but by Arjuna asking this question, it's kind of like he's giving Krishna a chance to say it again, even like with framed in the clearest context, like juxtaposing it to the impersonal absolute. Because the fact is in this world of Vedanta, essentially there are two schools of thought: the Advaita Vedanta or the Bhakti Vedanta. And so by asking this question, he's really framing it tight. You tell me who knows yoga better: those that worship you as a person, or those that approach the impersonal absolute, which he will say in text 14, I am the basis of that Brahman, of that impersonal. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Right? Okay. So here's the answer. Text 2. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Boom. Nothing ambiguous about that whatsoever. And then in text 3 and 4, he says, but those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. How do they do it? By controlling the various senses and by being equally disposed to everyone. Such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. Okay, now 2 things come out of this, out of these verses in particular. One, he's saying that this yoga, we can call this Jnana Yoga. It would commonly be called Jnana Yoga. That it's very difficult. That's one. Far more difficult than practicing bhakti because it's very direct. That's one reason. Kṛṣṇa will tell why, give some of the benefits to approaching him as a person in a moment. It's very difficult. And second, that it leads to Kṛṣṇa. Okay, it leads to Kṛṣṇa. Now, this is important. It's a bit of a nuance. Some of you may not be quite ready to catch on to this, but it's really important. If you walk into an Indian bookstore, or like say a bookstore that has a section on Indian philosophy or something, you say, I want a book on Jnana Yoga. They will probably give you a book on Advaita Vedanta. And the conclusion there is that the form of Kṛṣṇa is actually ultimately unreal, because any form is unreal. All that is actually real is this divine oneness, this impersonal light. And so if you have faith in Kṛṣṇa, that can bring you over some stepping stones, that can bring you forward. But in order to achieve the highest spiritual realization, one needs to let go of the idea of Kṛṣṇa, because it's illusion. We call that Mayavadi, because they believe that Kṛṣṇa's form is Maya, is made of illusion, is illusory, right? What that would be the most common way people would use the term Jnana Yoga now. But when Kṛṣṇa is speaking about this approach, he's saying, if you have no animosity towards my form, if you have no issue with me being a person, but somehow you become attracted to that my impersonal aspect, well, then you can approach that. It'll be difficult, but gradually you can achieve that and then come still forward and eventually reach me. But it's a difficult way to go. So sometimes we call this the difference between a Mayavadi, one who approaches the impersonal with the belief that Kṛṣṇa's form is illusion, and a Brahmavadi, one who approaches the impersonal form without any conclusive idea that Kṛṣṇa's form is illusion, right? But they're just attracted to that oneness. Then they have the potential, because there's no animosity towards that form, because there's no hesitation or fear, then they could approach Kṛṣṇa's form and achieve what Kṛṣṇa is establishing as the highest yoga. So the question was, Ke yoga vittamaha? Who's the amongst these two, who knows yoga better? And Kṛṣṇa answers unambiguously, Mad Bhaktaha. When we saw Ashtanga Yoga, just like I spoke about Jnana Yoga, that there's a popular conception of it, and then there's the way the Gita speaks about it. The popular conception is that the form of Kṛṣṇa is a lower understanding of spirituality, which one must give up and rise to the oneness. In the Gita, Kṛṣṇa, when he speaks of Jnana Yoga, he says, no. It's actually a path to me if you have no animosity towards me. We saw a similar idea in the 6th chapter. If you read which speaks of essentially Ashtanga Yoga, a meditative yoga. If you read the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where he leaves the idea open that one can meditate on a personal form of God, it's not required. If you have any hostility or animosity or fear of a personal form, you can still practice that Ashtanga Yoga by making any object the focus of your meditation. But when Kṛṣṇa is speaking about more or less the same practice, when he describes Ashtanga, or you could say Dhyana Yoga, meditative yoga, in the Bhagavad-gītā, he describes it as he's the object of meditation in that practice. And ultimately, you practice it to find him and fall in love with him in your heart. So it leads to bhakti. So also, again, when he's speaking of Jnana Yoga, he says, what is it? Bahunam janmana ante, after many births and deaths. Jnanavan, one who finally has attained knowledge, who possesses jnana. Mam prapadyante, they surrender unto me. As long as there's no animosity towards him, but they're more difficult paths. Here, Kṛṣṇa is saying that this is a very difficult path. In the 6th chapter, Arjuna heard about Ashtanga Yoga. He said, I don't think I can do this, too difficult. Kṛṣṇa is saying it's all right, because the highest yogi is the bhakti yogi. And here he's saying it again, that those that approach me, they know yoga better. Those that approach my form. Okay. Then he's going to speak a little bit about this again. He's going to contrast the impersonal approach to the personal approach. For those who, text 5, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. It's a very abstract and indirect. How do you meditate on nothing? And it's very challenging. And then in text 6 and 7, he contrasts this. He says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities to me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me. For them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. That struggle that the impersonalist is fighting to try to break free of the material energy. Kṛṣṇa says you don't have to fight like that. I'm beyond the material energy. The material energy is my energy. It's part of me, and I can swiftly deliver you, right? Because you're understanding you're demonstrating that you've understood the whole point to everything. That at the root of all existence is this beautiful being that is the one that's supporting us, whether we know it or not, and who's full of love for us. Just turn back and reconnect. Once you demonstrate that that's what you want to do, and you have no animosity to me, I'll take you right back in and I'll swiftly deliver you. Okay, now, he was speaking here about always meditating upon him, having one's mind fixed on him. This is the yoga. Yoga means fixing the mind. Kṛṣṇa is saying the best yoga is to fix your mind on me. So now in the next 4 verses, a really important part of the Bhagavad-gītā, where he's going to say, it can be challenging to fix your mind. If you have trouble fixing it on me directly, you can do this. And if you have trouble doing that, you can do this. And if you have trouble doing that, you can do this. So he gives options. It's like a descending ladder in the next 4 verses, text 8 through 11. Let's check them out. Verse 1, this is what he's going to say, is that if you can do this, this is just what you should do. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt. So mind fixed on Kṛṣṇa, supported by one's engaged intelligence. And by engaged intelligence, it's talking about the discernment that serves to give rise to actual meditation on Kṛṣṇa. The discernment, I'm not my body. I'm not my mind. I'm not any of these temporary identities. This kind of intelligence, this kind of intellectual engagement can be supportive to help give rise to, and therefore I fix my mind on Krishna. That's that kind of thing. This is a person that's very controlled, right? And so it's describing an advanced bhakti yogi. This kind of yogi is capable of sitting in one place, steadying their mind, and going into deep trance and meditating on Krishna's leelas. You can see that people that practice this in places like Vrindavan and so on, they would go there to sit and just meditate on Krishna's leelas. But most of our minds aren't so peaceful for that. Most of us will have trouble keeping the mind fixed if we were just sitting alone like that. So the next verse describes those who haven't mastered this, but are qualified to practice it. Okay, I'm not able to do that, but let me practice it. You can, there are practices that there's ways that one can regulate their life to practice being able to go into that kind of meditation. So you get that in text number 9. He says, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. In this, it's abhyasa yogena, right? Practice this type of yoga, fixing the mind on me. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Now, with this, you can think of, like, say, someone chanting japa, chanting Krishna's names, sitting alone, chanting these names, meditating on them. They realize, oh, my mind wandered, bring it back. My mind wandered, bring it back. I don't have the fixed mind like the person in chapter 8, but I'm practicing becoming that. And if I can practice it, gradually I can master it by Krishna's grace. But this might be too much of a struggle for people. I have no taste for that practice. I try it, I get bored of it, then my mind wanders and I want to go do something else. I need something that will keep me engaged in such a way where my mind is thinking of Krishna. But in that sitting down and meditative way, I'm not very good at that. Then in text 10, he says, if you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So if someone finds it hard to sit in meditation and keep their mind fixed on Krishna, there is this other way, that there's certain activities that one can take up that are intrinsically centered on pleasing Krishna. For example, distribution of Krishna prasadam, right? You get busy, you go buy the ingredients, you go into the kitchen, you're cooking it up, you're listening to a kirtan, you're thinking about Krishna, you're glad that you're serving him, and your mind is thinking of him. Whereas by being active, by keeping your body, your senses, your mind follows the body and senses and is moving towards Krishna. Sometimes people build temples, they distribute books or teach this kind of knowledge. They plant the sacred Tulsi tree, which Krishna loves so much. Or essentially, we can say they serve advanced devotees. They find people that are masters of bhakti yoga, and they say, how can I serve? And then that person says, oh, there's so many ways I can engage you. You can take up this engagement, do it with a heart open to Krishna, keep your mind on Krishna, and you will advance this way. So by throwing themselves into this kind of service, this active service, and letting go of other distractions, one can keep their mind absorbed in Krishna while they work for Krishna. And the beauty of it is that without fully conquering the mind, a person can keep their mind engaged in this type of devotion, and they can reach perfection by Krishna's grace, right? He steps in and helps. So he said in text 10, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage, right? It's a powerful form of yoga, right? And then gradually through this external service, it will mature, right? My external bhakti engagements will mature and qualify me to always be very internally connected. And even if I'm not engaged externally, I can sit and my mind can go deep into meditation on Krishna. But some people may still not be qualified for this external service in bhakti. And they're discussed in the next verse, text 11. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated, right? If you can't do this kind of work that directly serves Krishna, then do something that doesn't directly serve Krishna and then give up the results of that work. And this is called Nishkama Karma Yoga that we were speaking about earlier in the earlier chapters. The actions may not be intrinsically centered on Krishna, but they can still be engaged. It may be like an ordinary job or whatever it is. I do it and I give up the fruits. And the more that we offer the fruits of the work to God, the more that our understanding of our relationship with him will naturally grow. So Prabhupada writes a really interesting purport here. And essentially what he says is, sometimes someone is in a social situation due to their family, due to their some kind of religious structure, governmental kind of some kind of external circumstance, maybe due to the government, maybe due to their family. They can't openly worship Krishna and do work that serves Krishna directly. Then you find a way to work in a selfless sense, right? Try to work without taking something for it. And if you take the fruits of that work and find a way to offer them to Krishna, then even more quickly you will advance up that ladder. Okay, and then verse 12 kind of concludes this section. It's a little tricky. This can be a little confusing because it almost sounds like he's saying the opposite. He says, if you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. And better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is the renunciation of the fruits of action. It's at first he said meditation was the best thing, and now he's saying better than meditation is the renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. And the great commentators on this, they have a few different ways of dealing with this, but I think the simplest ways to understand this is to say that if you have trouble meditating, then better than trying to meditate is to renounce the fruits of your work. In other words, he said, better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of work. Right? If I have a hard time meditating, then better than me trying to become an external meditator is for me to work and renounce the fruits of it, for by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind, and then they can meditate, right, directly. So that kind of wraps up that section. We got a very clear comparative study of bhakti compared to impersonalism. You could say Bhakti Vedanta compared to Advaita Vedanta essentially was dealt with there. The personal approach to God versus the impersonal approach. Approaching Bhagavan, the personal form of Krishna, compared with approaching Brahman, the impersonal Brahman. And then we heard going step by step down a ladder. Try to meditate on me directly, and if you can't do that, practice meditating. If you can't do that, work while thinking of me. And if you can't do that, work and give up the fruits. But any of these, whichever step that you're ready to take it, and you'll be moving towards Krishna. That's the idea. And then in text 13 through 20, he gives a long list of qualities of a person that's very dear to him. These are really interesting. It's a beautiful way to wrap up these last 6 chapters. And you get a bit of the soft-heartedness of Krishna spoken about in this. And you get a real picture of what we're expected to become as bhakti yogis, the qualities that should manifest through our devotion. And I'm not going to read the verses straight out. They're kind of sprinkled through these 5 verses, I guess, or no, more than 5, 13 through 20. But I categorize them. Some of them have to do with being even-minded in all circumstances. Samatvam, we've talked about that before, right? If you've got bhakti, then you've got this even-mindedness. Some of them have to do with being detached or being renounced. Some of them have to do with how you relate to others. It's very important in Krishna's mind how you relate to others. And if you can relate to them in a beautiful, selfless way, Krishna's very pleased by that. And then some of them have to do with one's personal character and an inner disposition. And then some of them have to do with, more specifically, having a devotionally oriented way of relating to Krishna, right? So I'm going to just read what's mentioned here in those different categories rather than reading the verses. Related to having an even mind in all circumstances, Krishna speaks of qualities like being equal in happiness and distress, being equipoised in fear and anxiety, neither rejoicing or grieving, nor lamenting or desiring, and being equipoised in honor and dishonor, hot, cold, fame, or infamy. Samatvam, whatever the external situation is, I've got something going on internally in my connection with Krishna that keeps me anchored, no matter how much the world is getting rocked, right? Most of us, if one person says something not nice about us, we get so upset. When you develop your bhakti, when you have some deep connection, as you begin to get that connection, you can begin to let go of these things. Yeah. Anyway, I had a wonderful day today. I spent some time with an old friend, and he shared some thought with me. He said, when we understand our conditioning, how did he say it? Then it just becomes easy to let go. He said something like that. But this is wisdom. You grow up a little bit, someone says something about you, you don't worry about it, right? It's hot today. Yeah, it's going to be hot some days. Oh, it's cold today. Yeah, some days are going to be cold. I'm not about to let my mind get rocked by it. My mind is anchored in my thoughts on Kṛṣṇa. Okay. Then the next section had to do with detachment, qualities marked by letting go of ownership, outcomes, or material dependence. One who is very dear to Kṛṣṇa does not think of himself as a proprietor. Nothing's mine. I might be the steward of certain amounts of material energy, but nothing's mine. One who's dear to Kṛṣṇa is free from false ego. They're not dependent on the ordinary activities. Hey, things are changing. Yeah, things are going to change. Okay. They're without cares, free from all pains. They're not striving for some external results. They renounce both auspicious and inauspicious things. They're not interested in good karma or bad karma. Right? They're free from contaminating association, and they do not care for any fixed residence. Oh, things are changing. It's okay. Okay. And then the next, how do they relate to others? They're not envious. They're a kind friend to all beings. Think about this one. They don't put anyone into difficulty. Imagine stepping through the world gently enough that nobody thinks like, oh my God, that guy's screwing up things for me. And they're not disturbed by anyone. Equal to friends and enemies, right? They don't say, oh, this person's my friend, this person's my enemy. They see, even if people are not treating them well, that's not my enemy. Okay. Then the next one, personal character and inner disposition. This has to do with their inner discipline, their self-mastery, their inner purity. They're tolerant. People that are dear to Kṛṣṇa are always simply satisfied, whatever the circumstances, right? They're self-controlled, right? They got their senses under control, their behavior under control. They're very determined, right? Because they're not distracted by all these external things. They can have a strong, pure internal determination. They're pure, they're expert, they're silent, and they're fixed in knowledge. And then finally, the devotional orientation. And this is real important. And it gets towards the end, it really reaches the climax here. He says the defining bhakti qualities that these set the devotee apart from even other types of transcendentalists or yogis. They're engaged in devotional service with determination. Their mind and intelligence are fixed in Kṛṣṇa. They follow the imperishable path of devotion with faith, and they make Kṛṣṇa the supreme goal of their life. He says that person is very, very dear to me. So these are qualities that make one dear to Kṛṣṇa. They naturally awaken and blossom in a person who's devoted to him. And at the heart of all of this is devotion to Kṛṣṇa himself, the primary quality described here from which all these other beautiful qualities flow. It's devotion, it's bhakti. He's saying that all along. Many of these qualities, you could find them in self-realized persons on other spiritual paths, no doubt. And when we see them in Kṛṣṇa's devotees, it's an indication that through devotion, through bhakti, they've achieved the stages of realizations that these other paths are striving for. They do it through devotion. Right? And now here's a crucial point, that these qualities and devotion itself are not just stepping stones on a journey towards enlightenment. Devotion is the soul's eternal nature, and from it, these qualities flow naturally. In other words, when you have devotion, you have these qualities. And conversely, if these qualities are lacking in us, then so is our devotion. Devotion is lacking in us. So these qualities should be manifest in the devotee. We can cultivate bhakti while simultaneously cultivating these qualities. And when we have bhakti, we'll have all these beautiful qualities. And through those qualities, we'll naturally please Kṛṣṇa. Maybe I'll end with this little story. It just came to my mind right now. But there was one great saint and mystic bhakti poet named Undal. She lived that, I don't know how many thousands of years, definitely well over 10,000 years, maybe much more than that, in South India. Her father was a priest in the Sri Rangam temple, a Vishnu temple, very important Vishnu temple in South India. to this day. Thousands of people visit every day. Huge complex. And her father was the priest, and so she was just a little girl, and he would have laid out the garlands that were meant to be offered to Lord Vishnu. And she would sometimes, when she was alone, she'd put on that garland and look at herself in the mirror, right? But you're never supposed to put the garland on before it's offered to Vishnu. You might wear it after Vishnu's worn it as prasadam, but you would never wear it before it's being offered. Then it's kind of like used, and it's unfit to be offered. And one day her father caught her doing that, and he, kind of like reprimanded her. Hey, we don't do that. No. And then later, that her father, that priest, had a dream, and in the dream, the deity of Lord Vishnu of Ranganath said to him, "You told your daughter Andal not to wear the garlands before they're offered to me, but I actually prefer it. I liked her devotion, her love for me is so great that the garland is more pleasing to me to wear after she's worn it. So please tell her that she should wear the garlands before they're offered to me." And so then he woke up and he went to his daughter, bowed down to her, and said, "Vishnu wants you to wear them. I was wrong." And but this story is told sometimes to say, because you see, when she would decorate herself with that garland, most of us would be thinking to ourselves like, "Oh, look how good I look wearing it." Her whole idea is like, I wear it because I feel like if I wear it, it'll be pleasing to him. So in other words, we can decorate ourselves for the pleasure of God. And how do we best decorate ourselves to please God? It's all of these qualities. These are the ornaments that we decorate ourselves with. Self-control, purity, devotion, tolerance, being kind to every living being, seeing that I have no enemy, having an even mind, no matter what the external circumstances are, being detached, all of these different things. These are like the ornaments, the jewelry that we put on, not to glorify ourselves, but to please Kṛṣṇa. And he's saying when someone has all these ornaments, it's so pleasing to him. That's what he's looking for. He's a sweetheart. He's not a tyrant. He's a sweetheart. That's chapter 12, which completes the middle 6 chapters of the Gita. And now we have the last 6 chapters to go. These are really great. These will give knowledge which will be beneficial to help us meditate on Kṛṣṇa. These will help us become wiser. These will help us understand ourselves better, understand our world better, so that we can much more easily let go of everything that we're holding on to that holds us back, and give our heart, give our mind, give ourselves entirely to the divine, to God, to Kṛṣṇa. That's it for today. Thank you all so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.